Welcome to Secrets in the Shadows, where we uncover the darkest mysteries hidden in the quietest corners of America. These are stories of mystery, fear, and heartbreak that will leave you haunted. From the chilling letters sent to a family in Westfield, New Jersey, to the unsolved disappearance of Calico in New Mexico, these stories are as shocking as they are true. Lock your doors, check your windows, and get ready to hear some of the darkest secrets small towns try to bury. If you like these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a mystery from Secrets in the Shadows. Let's begin with the story of the Watcher House in Westfield, New Jersey. In 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus bought their dream home, a 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard in the quiet town of Westfield, New Jersey. They thought it was their forever home until the letters started showing up. Days after closing the house, Derek checked the mailbox and found a plain white envelope addressed to the new owner. Inside was a letter that would change their lives forever. It said, "Dear new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, welcome to the neighborhood. How did you come to be here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? My family has watched the house for decades. I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. Have they found what is in the walls yet? Time will tell." The letter was signed, The Watcher. The Broadduses were terrified. The letter mentioned their children, calling them young blood. It asked creepy questions like whether the kids would play in the basement. The letter writer claimed their family had watched the house for many years. First, the grandfather watched the house in the 1920s. Then the father watched it in the 1960s. And now it was the writer's turn. The message also warned about secrets hidden in the walls. The family immediately contacted the previous owners, John and Andrea Woods, to ask if they had ever received a letter like this. The Woods said that a few days before they moved out, they got a similar note about watching the house, but they thought it was a prank and threw it away. The Broadduses took the letter to the police, who told them not to share the news with neighbors. Anyone could be the watcher. A few weeks later, a second letter arrived. This time it addressed the Broadduses by name, though the sender spelled their last name wrong. The letter had even more frightening details. It mentioned the children's nicknames and described seeing their daughter painting on the porch. The watcher asked, "Is she the artist of the family?" The writer again talked about the young blood and asked why the family hadn't moved in yet. The Broadduses were so scared that they stopped bringing their children to the house. Derek installed cameras and stayed up at night, watching the street for anyone acting strangely. Each creak of the floorboards or shadow outside the window made them jump. Who was out there? Watching. A third letter came soon after. The tone was more angry. The watcher called Derek and Maria vile and promised bad things if they tried to change the house. The letter praised the neighbors, calling them my soldiers of the boulevard, for stopping the Broadduses from tearing down the house. It also mentioned accidents, house fires, illnesses, and even the mysterious death of a pet. The writer said the house won. In desperation, Derek and Maria had a priest bless the house. The priest sprinkled holy water in each room, reciting prayers to protect the family from evil. The blessing helped them feel a little safer, but the feeling of being watched never went away. By the end of 2014, the Broadduses decided to sell the house, but word about the letters had spread and buyers were scared off. After 6 months with no offers, they tried to sell it as a teardown. The town planning board rejected the idea after a long, heated meeting. During that meeting, some neighbors whispered that the Broadduses were lying about the letters to get attention, Derek sat quietly in the back, his fists clenched. In 2016, the family rented the house to tenants who agreed to stay as long as more cameras were installed. Not long after the new family moved in, a fourth letter arrived. It was the most aggressive one yet. The watcher mocked the Broadduses, saying the house had won, and promising bad luck. The letter mentioned accidents, sickness, and death. It was clear the person sending the letters was still watching. Police investigated several suspects. First, they looked at Michael Langford, a neighbor who was known for strange behavior like peeking into windows. He lived next door and had a direct view of the porch where the Broaddus daughter painted. But when police tested the DNA from the envelopes, it didn't match Michael Langford. The police also investigated a man who played violent video games under the name The Watcher. He had been seen parked near the house late at night. However, the man never came in for questioning, and the police couldn't force him to cooperate. Further DNA tests showed the samples came from a woman. This led police to test Michael Langford's sister, Abby. She was a real estate agent who could have been upset about the family buying the home, but her DNA did not match either. Some neighbors suspected the Broadduses themselves. People said they may have sent the letters to get out of the expensive purchase or to get media attention for a possible movie deal. The suspicion grew when Derek admitted he wrote a few anonymous letters in 2017 to neighbors who were making fun of his family online. He said he was frustrated after years of stress. However, police said there was no proof the family sent the original Watcher letters. In 2019, Andrew and Allison Carr bought the house for $959,000, much less than the $1.35 million the Broadduses paid. As of 2021, the new owners had not received any letters. However, police records showed the Carrs called 911 more than 50 times to report suspicious activity around the property. The Broadduses still live in Westfield, but they chose a different neighborhood. The identity of the Watcher remains a mystery. So, what do you think? Who was the Watcher? A neighbor with a sinister obsession, a prankster with a dark imagination, or something more sinister? Let us know your theories in the comments below. Now, brace yourself as we uncover the horrifying story of the Wesson family massacre in Fresno, California, a case so dark it will leave you questioning the very nature of family bonds. Families are supposed to be a place of love, protection, and trust. But in Fresno, California, one family became trapped in a nightmare of fear, control, and heartbreak. This is the story of Marcus Wesson, a father, self-proclaimed leader, and manipulative figure who turned his home into a place of fear. Marcus DeLon Wesson appeared to be a quiet, unassuming man with a long, wild beard and soft-spoken voice. But beneath the surface, he was a master manipulator with dark intentions. He used religion as a tool to control his family, claiming that absolute loyalty to him was the only way to achieve salvation. Born in Kansas in 1946, Wesson grew up in a strict Seventh-day Adventist household. His mother was deeply religious, and Wesson took those teachings but twisted them into something harmful. He preached about obedience and the world's end, but his rules were designed to give him complete control. As a young man, Wesson served as an ambulance driver in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. This period of his life, combined with his strict upbringing, shaped many of his beliefs and behaviors later on. He often referred to his military service as a time when he realized the importance of discipline and control. Over time, Marcus Wesson built a household based on fear and isolation. He had 9 children with Elizabeth, but his need for control went even further. He convinced his family that he was their spiritual leader and that the world outside was dangerous. Elizabeth became his wife when she was just 15 years old, and he was 27. From the very beginning, Wesson made it clear that he was in charge, and Elizabeth was expected to follow his rules. The family lived in rundown houses without electricity or running water. They often lived in small shacks, and at one point on an old boat with no plumbing or heat. Wesson taught his family that the world was filled with dangers and that only he could protect them. He wrote his own religious texts, blending traditional teachings with his own beliefs. He even taught that Jesus was a vampire who used his blood to save people, a belief he used to explain his strict control. But Wesson's control did not stop there. He also had relationships with his own daughters, which led to more children being born within the family. These relationships were a disturbing part of the household dynamic and were revealed during the trial. Wesson drilled his beliefs into their minds, preaching that the family must always stay together. If anyone tried to break them apart, he said, they would go to heaven together. He kept a wooden coffin in the living room as a constant reminder of this message. When visitors asked about it, he claimed it was a family tradition. Family life was filled with tension and hardship. The children were homeschooled using Wesson's handwritten texts. They were taught to obey without question and to fear the outside world. Wesson convinced them that the government, neighbors, and even extended family members were dangerous. He warned them that outsiders would try to tear their family apart. The children were often isolated from others, which made them even more dependent on their father. Simple moments of joy were overshadowed by constant fear. Siblings were instructed to watch each other and report any disobedience. Even laughter or playful behavior was sometimes met with disapproval. By 2004, cracks began to show. Some of the older children wanted to escape the oppressive environment. Wesson's nieces, Ruby and Sophina, who were daughters of his sister, demanded custody of their kids. They were afraid of what might happen if the children stayed with Wesson. These custody battles caused immense tension. Ruby and Sophina had once accepted Wesson's teachings, but after spending time away from the family, they realized how harmful the environment was. When they tried to take their children back, Wesson became defensive. He told the rest of the family that Ruby and Sophina had been influenced by the outside world and no longer cared about their family. The older children became divided. Some supported Wesson, while others, like Ruby and Sophina, questioned his authority. Whispers of escape spread among the children, but fear kept most of them silent. Wesson often warned his family that the world was against them. He taught that if anyone tried to take the children away, the family should go together to a better place. This belief became deeply ingrained in the household and was a significant factor in the tragic events that followed. On March 12, 2004, Ruby and Sophina arrived at the family's house on Hammond Avenue with police officers to help them retrieve their children. The home was cluttered and filled with old furniture and trash. Neighbors watched anxiously as the officers knocked on the door. Wesson came to the door, calm and polite, but refused to hand over the children. Tensions escalated. Wesson retreated inside, locking the door behind him. Then came the sound of gunshots. When officers finally forced their way inside, the scene they found was devastating. In a dim back bedroom, stacked in a pile, were the bodies of 9 family members, his daughters, nieces, and their children. Each victim had been fatally injured. The officers were overwhelmed. The victims appeared to have huddled together in their final moments. A .22 caliber handgun was found nearby. Wesson was discovered near the door, covered in blood, with a calm, blank expression. He was arrested immediately. The trial that followed revealed the full extent of Wesson's control. His children described years of emotional manipulation and strict rules. Wesson wrote his own religious texts, claiming he was preparing his family for the end of the world. He taught the children how to use firearms and told them that if anyone tried to separate the family, they should be ready to go to a better place. Prosecutors presented evidence of Wesson's disturbing influence and the fear he had instilled in his family. Witnesses said he taught the children to distrust outsiders and insisted that loyalty to the family was more important than anything else. The defense argued that one of the older children had carried out the act as part of a tragic pact, but prosecutors pointed out that Wesson was the one who taught this belief. Family members who testified during the trial shared heartbreaking stories of growing up in fear. They described how they were discouraged from thinking independently and were punished for asking questions. One survivor mentioned how even reading a book that wasn't approved by Wesson felt like an act of rebellion. After weeks of emotional testimony, Marcus Wesson was found guilty on 9 counts of first-degree murder, along with multiple counts of emotional mistreatment of his family members. He was sentenced to death and remains on death row in San Quentin State Prison. Psychologists who studied Wesson's case described him as a classic manipulator and cult-like figure. He isolated his family from the world, created an atmosphere of fear, and twisted religious beliefs to justify his control. Wesson's obsession with power was evident in the way he managed every aspect of his family's life. Witnesses said even when the children felt the situation was wrong, they were too afraid to resist. Experts believe that Wesson's control was rooted in his own upbringing. His mother's strict religious beliefs may have influenced his authoritarian parenting style. However, mental health professionals noted that Wesson took these beliefs to an extreme that caused deep emotional harm. The city of Fresno was left in shock. Neighbors questioned how something so tragic could have happened right in their neighborhood. Many admitted they had heard the children crying or noticed strange behavior, but assumed it was a private family matter. The surviving children were placed in foster care and given counseling. Fresno held candlelight vigils to mourn the victims and reflect on the warning signs they missed. The house on Hammond Avenue was demolished, leaving an empty lot as a silent reminder of the tragedy. Marcus Wesson remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison. In 2019, California Governor Gavin Newsom halted all executions in the state and dismantled the death row facility. This decision means Wesson will likely spend the rest of his life in prison without facing execution. As of 2025, Marcus Wesson is still alive and remains incarcerated at San Quentin. With California's death penalty on hold, he is expected to live out the rest of his life behind bars without the possibility of execution. In interviews, Fresno officials like Mayor Jerry Dyer, who was the police chief at the time, expressed frustration. Marcus Wesson was an evil person, Dyer said. He deserved the death penalty then, and he deserves the death penalty today. Survivors and the Fresno community continue to cope with the lasting impact of the tragedy. The lot on Hammond Avenue remains vacant, serving as a somber reminder of the past. The story has been explored in multiple documentaries and interviews. The book Where Hope Begins by Alicia Sofios provides insight into how the surviving family members rebuilt their lives after the tragedy. The story of the Wesson family massacre is a reminder of how manipulation and fear can cause unimaginable harm. A family that should have been safe and protected was instead controlled and hurt by the one person meant to protect them. Could this tragedy have been prevented if someone had spoken up sooner? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Next, we'll uncover the heartbreaking case of Skylar Neese in Star City, West Virginia, a story of friendship, betrayal, and a tragic end. Skylar Annette Neese was born on February 10th, 1996. She was the beloved daughter of Dave and Mary Neese, who described her as a bright, compassionate young woman with a sharp sense of humor. Skylar loved reading, spending time with family, and watching her favorite TV shows. She had a natural curiosity for the world and aspired to become a criminal defense attorney, driven by her passion for justice. She was an only child, cherished by her parents, who described their family life as close-knit and filled with laughter. Skylar had a sharp wit and a kind heart, always eager to help others. She excelled academically, maintaining straight A grades, and had her heart set on becoming a criminal defense attorney. But behind the scenes of her seemingly typical teenage life, darkness lurked. Skylar had become entangled in a toxic friendship with Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf, two girls she once considered her best friends. The friendship, however, had grown tense, with Skylar often finding herself the odd one out. It was a warm summer night, July 5th, 2012. Skylar climbed out of her bedroom window for what she thought was a typical late-night adventure with Sheila and Rachel. Security footage captured the moment she slipped into a car, waiting just outside her family's apartment complex. It would be the last time anyone saw Skylar alive. The next morning, her parents woke to find her missing. Panic set in, but their fears were met with a plausible explanation from Sheila Eddy. Skylar had snuck out with them the night before, but was safely dropped off near her home around midnight. The police initially believed Skylar was a runaway, but Dave Neese knew his daughter better. Something was terribly wrong. Days turned into weeks. The small town of Star City buzzed with rumors. Skylar's parents plastered flyers around town. Her face became impossible to miss, and all the while, Sheila Eddy, Skylar's so-called best friend, played the role of the heartbroken friend. She posted emotional tributes on social media, attended search parties, and even sat on the Neese family couch, comforting Skylar's distraught parents. But behind the crocodile tears was a terrifying truth. Sheila knew exactly what had happened to Skylar. On that fateful night, Sheila and Rachel had lured Skylar into their car under the guise of a joyride. They drove to a remote, wooded area just across the Pennsylvania state line, an area they'd scouted days prior. Skylar, unaware of the premeditated betrayal, laughed and chatted with the girls she trusted most, until they counted to 3. Together, Sheila and Rachel pounced. They stabbed Skylar over 50 times as she fought desperately for her life, even managing to grab the knife and cut Rachel in the process. Her final words were whispered into the darkness. Why? That haunting question would echo through the minds of everyone who learned of this crime. Why would 2 teenage girls murder their closest friend? The answer was as senseless as it was disturbing. When Rachel Schoaf eventually confessed, she said simply, "We just didn't like her anymore." The next morning, Skylar's parents woke to find her missing. Panic set in, but their fears were met with a plausible explanation from Sheila Eddy. Skylar had snuck out with them the night before, but was safely dropped off near her home around midnight. The police initially believed Skylar was a runaway, but Dave Neese knew his daughter better. Something was terribly wrong. Days turned into weeks. The small town of Star City buzzed with rumors. Skylar's parents plastered flyers around town. Her face became impossible to miss. And all the while, Sheila Eddy, Skylar's so-called best friend, played the role of the heartbroken friend. She posted emotional tributes on social media, attended search parties, and even sat on the Neese family couch, comforting Skylar's distraught parents. But behind the crocodile tears was a terrifying truth. Sheila knew exactly what had happened to Skylar. The investigation into Skylar's disappearance intensified when police discovered blood evidence in the trunk of Sheila's car. Cell phone records placed the girls at the remote site where Skylar's body was later found. Digital forensics unraveled their carefully crafted lies. Investigators also analyzed hundreds of social media interactions that revealed a pattern of coded communication between Sheila and Rachel after the crime. It was Rachel who cracked under the weight of guilt. On December 28, 2012, she confessed to the crime, leading authorities to Skylar's shallow grave, hidden beneath branches and debris in the Pennsylvania woods. Sheila Eddy was arrested soon after. The town was left in disbelief. Two bright, seemingly normal teenage girls had orchestrated a cold-blooded murder simply because they no longer wanted Skylar around. Rachel Shoaff pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Sheila Eddy pled guilty to first-degree murder and received life with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Skylar's parents channeled their grief into action, pushing for Skylar's Law, which requires law enforcement to issue an Amber Alert immediately when a child is missing, even if they are initially considered a runaway. Star City was left reeling. Teachers, classmates, and neighbors were horrified to learn that the smiling, friendly girls they'd known were capable of such cruelty. Memorials were erected in Skylar's honor, and her parents became vocal advocates for children's safety. Her classmates remember her as a caring friend who loved to make others laugh. Community members expressed shock and heartbreak, describing the crime as a betrayal of trust in their small, close-knit town. At Rachel Shoaff's parole hearing, she admitted the motive stemmed from a secret romantic relationship with Sheila Eddy, a truth that shocked many. Skylar had known about the relationship, and the girls feared she might reveal it. Rachel appeared remorseful, breaking down as she described Skylar's final moments. The Neese family, present at the hearing, implored the board to deny parole, emphasizing the irreparable damage caused by the girls' actions. As of 2025, Rachel Shoaff has been denied parole twice, with her next hearing scheduled for June 2025. In her 2024 hearing, she admitted her fear of exposure regarding her relationship with Sheila Eddy was a major factor in the crime. She expressed remorse, but Skylar's father, Dave Neese, described her as a malicious monster and continues to fight against her release. Meanwhile, Sheila Eddy remains in prison and will be eligible for parole in 2028. Skylar's funeral was a somber event that drew people from across the community. Friends and family gathered to share memories of her humor, intelligence, and kindness. Her parents held a candlelight vigil at her high school, where hundreds of candles illuminated the night, symbolizing the light Skylar brought into their lives. Next, we'll take a deep dive into the mysterious case of the McStay family murders, a story of sudden disappearance, a desert discovery, and unanswered questions that continue to haunt investigators to this day. It was an ordinary February day in Fallbrook, California, a quiet, sunlit suburb known for its avocado groves and family-friendly atmosphere. But on February 4th, 2010, the McStay family, Joseph, Summer, and their two young sons, Gianni and Joseph Jr., vanished without a trace. What seemed like a simple disappearance would soon unravel into one of the most baffling and horrifying murder cases in modern American history. How could an entire family disappear from their home in broad daylight? Who would want to harm this seemingly happy, loving family? And what secrets would the Mojave Desert reveal years later? The McStay family was like any other American family, full of dreams and hope for the future. Joseph McStay owned and operated Earth-Inspired Products, a company specializing in decorative fountains. His wife, Summer, was born Virginia Lisa Aranda, also known as Summer Martelli, and she was a licensed real estate agent. Their children, Gianni and Joseph Jr., were only 4 and 3 years old, respectively, with their whole lives ahead of them. On February 8, 2010, the family's 1996 Isuzu Trooper was found in a parking lot near the Mexican border in San Isidro. It was believed to have been parked there between 5:30 and 7 o'clock p.m. that evening. The vehicle's location between February 4th and February 8th remains unknown. It all began with silence. Family and friends grew worried when phone calls and messages went unanswered. Joseph McStay, a successful businessman in the decorative water fountain industry, was reliable and dedicated to his family. His wife, Summer, was equally devoted to their home and boys. When days passed with no word, Joseph's brother, Mike McStay, decided to act. He went to the family's home in Fallbrook. Mike found an eerie scene: untouched food on the kitchen counter, bowls of popcorn on the couch, and their dogs left in the backyard without food or water. The McStay family had simply vanished. But why and how? Authorities discovered the family's white Isuzu Trooper near the San Isidro border crossing into Mexico. Surveillance footage showed a family of 4 resembling the McStays crossing the border. But experts questioned whether it was really them. Why would they leave everything behind, without passports, money, or contacting their loved ones? As investigators dug deeper, the mystery only deepened. Theories swirled. Did the McStays leave voluntarily to start a new life? Were they fleeing danger, or was something far more sinister at play? Early in the investigation, authorities considered the possibility that the family had voluntarily left for Mexico. This was based on computer searches for what documents do children need for traveling to Mexico, and Spanish language lessons. Surveillance footage showed a family resembling the McStays crossing the border, but relatives doubted they would travel to Mexico voluntarily. Authorities also discovered a financial motive. Charles Chase Merritt, Joseph's business associate, had a gambling problem and owed Joseph over $42,000 due to botched work in 2009. Investigators believe financial gain was a motive for the murders. 3 years later, a motorcyclist riding through a remote part of the Mojave Desert stumbled upon something horrifying: human remains. Investigators uncovered 2 shallow graves containing the skeletal remains of 2 adults and 2 children. DNA testing confirmed their worst fear. It was the McStay family. Autopsies revealed the victims died from blunt force trauma, likely from a sledgehammer found in the grave. This was no accident. It was cold-blooded murder. Detectives turned their attention back to Charles Merritt. Phone records showed Merritt's cell phone had been in the desert near the burial site when the bodies were buried. Financial records painted an even darker picture. Merritt had embezzled over $21,000 from Joseph's business account after the family disappeared. His DNA was also found on the McStay's abandoned vehicle. Merritt was arrested on November 5, 2014, after his DNA was found on the steering wheel and gear shift of the McStay family's Isuzu Trooper. The trial began in January 2019. Prosecutors presented evidence of Merritt's financial motives and cell phone records, placing him near the burial site. The defense argued there was no hard proof linking Merritt to the murders. In June 2019, Merritt was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death in January 2020. Merritt, however, maintained his innocence. The case captured national attention, leading to various media productions. San Diego-based true crime author Caitlin Rother wrote a book titled Down to the Bone: The Mysterious McStay Family Murders, which provides an in-depth look into the case. Additionally, the Investigation Discovery Network aired a 7-part docuseries titled Two Shallow Graves, offering a comprehensive look into the trial and murder case. The McStay family's tragic story is one of betrayal, greed, and loss. An entire family was destroyed by someone they trusted. Their deaths left a community devastated and a nation horrified. While justice was served, the haunting question remains: how could someone commit such an unspeakable act against an innocent family? Next, let's shift our focus to Belen, New Mexico, a small town haunted by a case that has baffled investigators for decades. Get ready for the mysterious disappearance and chilling clues surrounding Tara Calico. Belen, New Mexico, a peaceful town where neighbors were familiar faces and community spirit was strong. But on September 20th, 1988, that sense of safety was shattered. 19-year-old Tara Calico went for her regular morning bike ride and never returned. The discovery of a haunting Polaroid photograph a year later deepened the mystery. A young woman, bound and gagged, sat beside a terrified boy. The woman looked eerily like Tara. Was it really her? Who was the boy? And what happened that morning? Join us as we uncover the chilling details of the Tara Calico disappearance, one of America's most perplexing cold cases. Tara Lee Calico was born on February 28, 1969. She was a bright, independent young woman attending the University of New Mexico, where she studied psychology. Tara lived with her mother, Patty Duell, her stepfather, John Duell, and siblings in Belen, New Mexico, a town with a population of around 7,000 to 8,000 in the 1980s. It was a community where people left their doors unlocked and greeted each other with smiles. Tara was an active, driven young woman who loved tennis, music, and spending time with friends. September 20th, 1988, was a clear, crisp morning. Tara borrowed her mother's neon pink Huffy mountain bike as her own bike had a flat tire. She wore a white t-shirt with the words First National Bank of Belen, white shorts with green stripes, and white and turquoise Avia tennis shoes. Tara left her home around 9:30 a.m., heading down Highway 47 for her 36-mile bike ride. Before leaving, she joked with her mother to come find her if she wasn't back by noon. When noon passed and Tara hadn't returned, Patty grew anxious. By 3:00 p.m., she contacted the Valencia County Sheriff's Office to report her daughter missing. The search for Tara began immediately. Family, friends, and local police scoured the highway. Near the side of the road, they found pieces of Tara's broken Walkman and a cassette tape she had been listening to. Witnesses reported seeing a white or light-colored pickup truck with a camper shell following Tara that morning. But no one could identify the driver. The tire tracks at the scene suggested a struggle had occurred, as if Tara had been forcibly taken. Almost a year later, in July 1989, a Polaroid photograph was discovered in a parking lot in Port St. Joe, Florida, over 1,000 miles away. The picture showed a teenage girl and a young boy lying on a bed, bound with duct tape over their mouths. The girl bore a striking resemblance to Tara. Both individuals appeared frightened. The book she was resting on was identified as a copy of My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews, a detail that haunted investigators. The photograph was found in a parking spot where a windowless Toyota cargo van had been parked earlier. Witnesses described the driver as a man in his 30s with a mustache. The FBI analyzed the photo, and Scotland Yard concluded the girl was Tara. However, other experts were less certain. The boy was believed to resemble Michael Henley, who had disappeared while on a camping trip in New Mexico. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered disturbing details. Tara had been seen that morning by several witnesses, all of whom recalled the suspicious truck following her. Authorities also discovered that someone had been watching Tara for weeks. Neighbors reported seeing the same truck parked near her home multiple times. In 2003, new information surfaced. Witnesses claimed that 2 local teenage boys had hit Tara with their truck by accident. Fearing repercussions, they reportedly kidnapped her and disposed of her body with the help of family members. Despite these allegations, no arrests were made. Theories surrounding Tara's disappearance abound. Some believe she was abducted by a stranger. Others suspect she was a victim of human trafficking. The Polaroid remains a focal point of these theories. The identity of the boy in the photo remains unknown, though some speculate he may have been another missing child from New Mexico. One theory involves law enforcement misconduct. Some locals believe officials covered up the case to protect influential families. Allegations of mishandled evidence and overlooked leads have fueled these suspicions. In 2008, Valencia County Sheriff Rene Rivera publicly stated he knew what happened to Tara, but lacked sufficient evidence to prosecute. He claimed that 2 teenagers, allegedly intoxicated, hit Tara while she was cycling. Panicking, they took her and disposed of her body with the help of their parents. However, Rivera never disclosed names, and the case stagnated. In 2013, the FBI reopened the case and increased the reward for information to $20,000. They re-examined the Polaroid and other pieces of evidence, but found no definitive answers. In 2021, the case gained renewed attention due to documentaries and true crime podcasts. A documentary titled Vanished: The Tara Calico Investigation explored potential suspects and raised new questions about the Polaroid. Social media also became a tool for spreading awareness, with groups advocating for justice. In June 2023, the Valencia County Sheriff's Office announced a significant breakthrough in the Tara Calico case. Officials stated they had gathered enough evidence to submit the case to the district attorney's office for possible charges. Sheriff Neese Vigil expressed confidence that those responsible would soon be held accountable. However, the identities of the suspects remain sealed under court order. This development follows years of investigative efforts, including the formation of a task force in 2013 and the FBI offering a $20,000 reward in 2019. Despite the new lead, officials have not disclosed details about the suspects or the nature of the evidence collected. The case continues to draw public attention, with many hoping that justice for Tara Calico is finally within reach. Tara's family, especially her mother Patty, never gave up hope. Patty appeared on talk shows and worked tirelessly to keep Tara's story alive. She pleaded with the public for help and remained convinced the girl in the Polaroid was her daughter. Sadly, Patty passed away in 2006 without knowing the fate of her daughter. John Doyle continued his search, working with organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Despite his age, he remained hopeful for closure. Decades later, Tara Calico's disappearance remains unsolved. Was she the girl in the Polaroid? Who was the boy beside her? And who was driving that mysterious white truck on that September morning in 1988? The answers may still be out there, waiting for someone to come forward. If you have any information about the case, contact the Valencia County Sheriff's Office. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories chilling, please like this video, subscribe to Secrets in the Shadows, and turn on your notification so you never miss an upload. It really helps our channel grow and allows us to keep bringing you more in-depth true crime stories. Stay safe, stay aware, and as always, keep searching for the truth in the shadows. See you in our next video.